Hello friends, Mehjabin here. Today I am going to talk about the literary ballad, how different it is from the traditional ballad. I am also going to dwell upon 11 special characteristics of a ballad. So let's get started. What is a ballad in poetry? A ballad is a poem which tells a tale or a story. Sometimes it can be a narrative of certain events which happened in the past. In such a case, it is a historical narrative. At other times, a ballad can also tell stories about heroes and monsters. It's a kind of poem which has music set to it, and it is usually meant to be either recited or sung. The word ballad comes from the Latin word ballare, which means dancing song. While composing a ballad, a poet often uses elaborate images in order to express a story. Literary ballads are written in quatrains and couplets. What is a couplet? Two lines in a verse or poem can be called a couplet if they are of the same length and if they rhyme. A couplet often expresses a complete thought. Now, in contrast to a couplet, we also have a quatrain. Now, what is a quatrain? A group of 4 lines in a poem is called a quatrain. For instance, a stanza in a poem can be a quatrain. The lines in a quatrain often rhyme in the ABAB, ABBA or ABCB pattern. So before we look into the 11 different characteristics of the literary ballad, we will check out the 2 different types of ballads. One is the folk ballad, which is also called as the traditional ballad, and the other of course is the literary ballad. Now in the case of a folk ballad, the author is usually unknown. Nobody knows the real identity of the author. However, in the case of a literary ballad, the author or poet is a known personality. Then folk ballads are basically oral, while literary ballads exist in a written form. The folk or traditional ballad undergoes many changes as it is passed from one generation to another by word of mouth. However, in the case of the literary ballad never undergoes any change as its author is a known person and time cannot change the form of the literary ballad. The ballad remains preserved in both soft and hard copies. In the case of the folk or traditional ballad, the author might be a common man like a shepherd, a peasant or a villager, while in the case of a literary ballad, the author is usually a person from a literary circle. Like for example, we have John Keats, Samuel Taylor Coleridge and William Wordsworth. These were all known authors of the literary form of ballad. Now we'll talk about the 11 different characteristic features of a literary ballad. The language of a ballad is very simple. It is expressed in a way which can be easily understood by the readers. Common day-to-day words are used in the literary ballad. Then the literary ballad is a narrative poem. Its purpose is to tell a story which has a universal significance. Then this kind of ballad is usually narrated in the third person. The story is conveyed in an objective way. The narrator does not express his or her personal feelings or emotions with regard to the content of the tale he or she is narrating. A ballad, a literary ballad, often has a repetition or a refrain. This repetition divides different sections of the story. Then A literary ballad often comprises of multiple characters in the story. The ballad begins suddenly. It always starts in an abrupt and unexpected way, and the ending of a ballad is also usually sad or tragic. The ending may also be abrupt. Literary ballads are either written in couplets or quatrains. Such a ballad may have repetition of stanzas. The lines in a literary ballad are often written in complete sentences, and a literary ballad is often written in a language that expresses information about the characters, the connections between them, events, time, and setting. Almost all literary ballads have supernatural elements in them. For instance, John Keats and Samuel Taylor Coleridge used supernatural elements to convey their stories. Now let us take a look at some popular examples of ballad poems. For example, we have the Rime of the Ancient Mariner. This was composed by Samuel Taylor Coleridge. This is a literary ballad. Then we have the Second Coming, composed by William Butler Yeats. La Bella Dame Sends Mercy, composed by John Keats. Ballad of the Gibbet by Francois Villon. As You Came from the Holy Land by Sir Walter Raleigh. The Ballad of a Bachelor by Ellis Parker Butler. The Walrus and the Carpenter by Lewis Carroll. Ballad on the American War by Robert Burns. The Kirk of Scotland's Alarm, a ballad, again by Robert Burns. A Ghost in the Midnight by Nan Nichols. The Ballad of Reading Gaol by Oscar Wilde. Well, that's all for today. Meet you again very soon. Bye.